sure you're also not going to maintain the team either. Should have just made it a best ball league so you really could just stop paying attention. And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Strategy Show. It is Friday, September 2nd. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer, and we are brought to you by PrizePicks. 13-game MLB slate to close out the work week before we start ramping up for NFL next week. It's going to be great for everybody that wants it. I actually kind of do. I'm excited for Showdown. I enjoy NFL Showdown, but that's neither here nor there. What you guys should do right now is hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Adam, how was your MLB slate yesterday? Or both of them, I guess.
Not great. I got crushed on the early slate. My biggest stand ended up being playing a lot of Eduardo Rodriguez and not playing a lot of the Mariners, and that went the exact opposite way that I needed it to go.
That'll do it.
The late slate, I think I came close to even. Lost a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, nothing interesting for me yesterday. How good is Spencer Strider?
Extremely.
Do you think someone should tell DraftKings?
Yeah, that would be nice because he was 82% owned last night.
Yeah, it's so dumb. It's so dumb. Josh Byer says thoughts on the Donovan Mitchell trade. I don't really have any thoughts. Like, I, I don't really know what it changes.
So he is a better spot up 3-point shooter than I realized.
Yeah, his catch and shoot numbers were really good.
Oh, I just pulled up the YouTube stream and it wasn't muted, but I thought it was Mike talking in the background, and I'm just like, what's he saying? Like I can't really hear him. But yeah, no. So he's a better spot up 3-point shooter than I realized. Because my first thought was kind of just like, obviously he's better than Colin Sexton, but I feel like they have similar weaknesses, and you just gave up a ton to like improve, but kind of still have the same issues. Him being a good spot up 3-point shooter is useful, I think. Like obviously I think Garland's really, really good. They both can knock down threes off of each other, so that's good. Like clearly it makes them better, and they're not going to land free agents because they're Cleveland. So it's one of those, like I kind of feel this. I was talking with somebody about, if the Knicks should have done it or whatever.
I think they made out. I think they made out better by not doing this.
So that's initially what I said too. But then it really just comes back to like, you have to be realistic about where you're gonna, like what your options are. At least for the Knicks, like he might end up there as a free agent anyway. But
if this doesn't go well, he's a Knick in 2 years.
Right. But like for Cleveland, the guys that you can realistically get, you're just kind of capped. And so it's just like, all right, is Donovan Mitchell like the ideal guy to put your team over the top? No, but what else are you gonna do?
That's sort of where I land. If I'm the Knicks, I'm happy that it didn't happen. You still have all of those picks and all of those assets to get the next pissed off superstar in 4 months or whatever. Like nothing's changed there. I don't know how to say XKXLLA says you don't know what it changes. LMAO. The Cleveland Cavaliers are plus 125 to make the play-in this year. I don't know what you think they just did, but they didn't become one of the 4 best teams in the East by making this trade. So I don't know what it does, because I think their error bars are like 2nd and 8th. Like, I don't have a great feel for it. They have no chance of winning the East without another move. You're not doing it with Chetty Osman or insert whoever the hell you want at the 3. Did they improve? Yeah, of course. Like it's better than certainly not Karis LeVert. They're certainly better. You're replacing Markkanen with Donovan Mitchell. That's a gigantic win for the team just in general. They also didn't become anything. It all hangs on Mobley. If Evan Mobley becomes an all-NBA player, this is a very different team. I just don't know how long Donovan Mitchell wants to be in Cleveland, which is a reasonable stance. But like they have the 6th best win odds in the East. They're not all that far ahead of Atlanta or Toronto. Like it's a loaded conference and they're not at the top of it. Yeah, I don't know what you're doing, but like, you got to do that if you're Cleveland. I don't think they gave up.
Saying you don't know what it changes saying you don't know what it changes doesn't mean that you don't realize it makes them better. It's just that in the scheme of like, are you a title contender or not? It changed nothing. Cleveland was not a title contender 2 days ago. They're not a title contender today. Exactly.
They're set up to make another move if they can to improve the roster, try to get a wing, whatever that ends up being. But yeah, they're not likely to host a playoff series. If you're not hosting a playoff series, then I don't really care what you did. Anyway, I cannot wait to talk about basketball. It's going to be great. It's so much more interesting than everything else.
I hope I win the week 1 Millie Maker so I can just retire and not do it.
You wouldn't want to, I guess you wouldn't want to still do a small amount of content just to like stay busy. I mean, like the Millie Maker is not really changing your life.
The Millie Maker is pretty drastically changing my life, but
well, like you're not done playing DFS. You're probably playing more DFS, no?
Right, I'm not done playing DFS, but now I have like a more comfortable downswing cushion. No, I mean I was tongue in cheek. Like I would keep doing content. If I win 2, I might be out. But basketball season, I think, has started by then. So
I love that you're just like, if I win 2 Millie Makers, I could bail, as if like 1 is just already in the books. 13 games. You ready for this?
Yeah.
I love that people just think that they traded for Donovan Mitchell and now they're like the co-title favorites. It's insane.
People think Donovan Mitchell's a lot better than Donovan Mitchell's weird. It's like a pretty large percentage of people think he's a lot better than he is, and a pretty large percentage of people think he's a lot worse than he is.
Josh, talk less. The Millie Maker not going to change your life. It wouldn't change my life at all. I just have a slightly larger nest egg than I do right now. But like, literally nothing would change about my life. What am I going to do? What's the difference here?
I can buy a lot more shirts and sunglasses.
I already do whatever it is that I want to do. My life is great. I don't know how to say that without sounding like an asshole, but what we're talking about is just creating a larger savings account.
Well, yeah, I mean, lower risk of ruin. Like,
yeah. I'm not just going to eat caviar on a day-to-day basis because I won the Millie. Like,
no, of course not. But from a doing content standpoint, it's like you do the content just because it balances out the losing streaks, or at least that's why I do it.
Yeah, it's a great safety blanket.
But
I can't retire on $1 million.
No, but if I have a massive amount of money to get through the downswings, like I don't need the steady income.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. That's what it changes.
Your day-to-day doesn't change at all by winning the Millie Maker.
No,
other than you may do like half the shows that you do now. Those GPP videos aren't coming out at 1 o'clock any longer. That's for sure. But
because I'm busy eating caviar.
Right. Yeah. Guys, $1 million is not a lot of money any longer, particularly when you pay 30% of that in taxes for that year. We're down to $700K. Do I want $700,000? Yeah, I certainly do. Doesn't change anything that I'm doing today or tomorrow. Still got to work. Can't retire. It's not how this works. Orioles and A's. Should we just put Gunnar Henderson in the Hall of Fame now?
Yeah, he is the best player to ever play.
4.4 run implied total for the Orioles, 3.6 for the A's. Dean Kramer and JP Sears. Kramer, 12% owned here, 7,100. That's what happens when you get to face the Oakland A's. Sears, unowned. I don't see these guys as all that different relative to salary. 12% for Kramer feels a little high on this slate, but I guess I get it. I got to 7%. I don't really care about either one of these guys as a priority.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much where I'm at too. Kramer's just kind of a guy, but he's 7,100 facing Oakland, so obviously there's some appeal there. So far this season, he's struck out 18.5% of hitters, 4.2 xFIP. Just a pretty average run-of-the-mill pitcher in a good spot. On the other side for Sears, as they started this year, only a 13.5% strikeout percentage. Certainly like the matchup better for Kramer, but also a cheaper price tag on Sears. So not a ton of interest in either guy. Ideally, I get to Kramer before I get to Sears.
Yeah, I basically have the exact same amount of both guys. Sears is actually my preferred paydown arm. Do you see anything at the bottom? Let's say below 7K. Do you see, like, who do you prefer?
Daniel Lynch.
Okay, that's fair. He would be 2 for me, and he's the only other guy that I actually have at the bottom. So we're in the same boat there. All told, neither one of these guys are like the top creme de la creme of today's slate.
No.
I guess we're gonna have to start with A's bats. Honestly, Orioles and A's are basically owned the same, but the A's are second in top value. They were second in my value metric as well. I'm not really getting to all that much here. I got 4% of both teams. I kind of just think that I'm going to be largely avoiding this game. There's nothing that stands out on either side, pitching or hitting, that I think is a priority today.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just another spot where I think that the A's are useful as value bats, but they're not a very exciting team. When you talk about guys that you would actually want, it's pretty much Seth Brown, either one of the catchers. Damaris Garcia at 2K does have some power, but it's mostly just like filler for me, where you're going to be able to build really good teams around them, but they themselves obviously suck. On the other side, JP Sears hasn't been bad this year at limiting power so far. 128 expected ISO to lefties, 143 expected ISO to righties in a limited sample. The Orioles are cheap outside of Rutschman, Santander, Mullins if he's in the lineup. But other than that, they are really cheap. So it is a spot where, like, I think they have a lot better hitters than the A's. And functionally, I'm not really sure there's that big of a difference in the type of lineups you can build between the two. So that does make the Orioles somewhat appealing to me, where they're only getting 3% ownership. Oakland's only at 3% as well, but the Orioles do have a 4.5% chance of being the top stack.
Are there any cash options here? I don't really see one on either side. bats or pitching.
Maybe one of the Oakland catchers or Seth Brown.
Yeah. Doesn't seem most likely today, but
Right.
this is just one of those games. Just sort of exists. 13 games, hard to prioritize a lot,
Yeah, and the Orioles on DraftKings are back to most likely having 2 first basemen in their top 6, which is frustrating from a stacking standpoint.
Yeah.
Oh, and way to go, DraftKings. So yesterday, Gunnar Henderson was shortstop only. He played his first game at third base. Yesterday, he played shortstop. Now he's only a third baseman, so he has the same position as Ramon Urias.
Tomorrow will be interesting when he's third base shortstop, you would think.
Right.
Which also is fantastic MPE. Mets and Nats. Now we could actually talk about something. This is going to be the most fascinating thing I think we'll talk about. 4.8 run implied total for the Mets, 3 for the Nats, which is the second lowest on the slate. David Peterson going for New York. Josiah Gray going for Washington. We have David Peterson, 8,300, projected for 32% ownership. I think he looks good. I think he's the best sort of option in this mid-tier. Is he that much better than Lance McCullers today? But just in general, should he be 32% owned?
Yeah, that's a lot of ownership, especially like you said, when McCullers is only 7%. I get that it's a solid matchup against the Nats, but they do also have plenty of right-handed power. Not that that's been an issue for Peterson this year. 26.7% strikeout percentage, 103 expected ISO to righties. I think he looks really good. I do think 32% ownership is kind of a lot.
Yeah, if he's 32% owned, this will be my biggest pitching fade of the day. Right now, I have 5% just because I think that number is crazy. If that gets to like 20, 25, then I'm going to end up sort of around the field. But for right now, the easiest way for me to get different if he's going to be in a third of lineups is just simply not having all that much David Peterson. Look,
yeah, I mean, there's
good.
just a lot of pitchers that I don't like as much as Peterson, but that I think are relatively comparable, that are getting, half the ownership or less. You have Alex Cobb, you have Jeffrey Springs, obviously difficult matchup for Springs and really for Cobb too, but getting half the ownership. We mentioned McCullers getting like a fifth of the ownership. It's not that I think any of those guys project as well as Peterson or as good of a play, but I don't really think he should be 2-1.
No, that we're on the same page there. That's just it. He's the second highest owned pitcher on the slate, and the highest owned pitcher on the slate gets there by a mile. Josiah Gray, anything there for you? I don't have anything.
Nope.
All righty. Then let's talk Mets bats. I guess 7th in top stack, 16th in ownership. So a little bit of positive leverage here.
If you would pick up 700K off the street.
I would try. I would hope it's in hundreds, because if it's in singles, I'm going to need a crane. Do you care about the Mets today? I don't really. Like, they're fine. No issue getting to New York.
I think there's a lot of upside there against Gray. Like, he's a good strikeout pitcher, but 155 expected ISO to righties, 275 to lefties is just an absurd number. Brandon Nimmo, Francisco Lindor, Dan Vogelbach, McNeil, Naquin, Escobar, all these guys from the left side. Obviously, Marte and Alonso can get it done from the right side. I actually like the spot for the Mets from an upside standpoint. They are only projected for 2% ownership right now because they're expensive. I like getting to the Mets if you can afford it.
I can't afford it yet. That's for sure. I have some other teams. Like, clearly I like the upside. I don't love the park though. Josiah Gray is whatever. Completely meaningless, average-ish pitcher.
Extremely below average at limiting power.
Very true. Very true. Wish this were in a different park.
Yeah. Still a 4.8 implied run total for New York.
Yeah, I was actually a little surprised to see it as high as it is, but I guess that's probably a testament to Josiah Gray. Do you like the value of Washington on the opposite side? That I don't need.
Yeah, not really. Like I said before, Peterson's done a very, very good job limiting power this year. So, obviously Meneses has power. Lane Thomas leading off is really cheap. He has some power. Voit, Cruz are always fine, but Peterson's not really a guy I want to pick on here.
Let's go to game 3. Tigers and Royals. This is definitely a talking point. Basically a coin flip game, 4.2 runs on both sides, Drew Hutchison and Daniel Lynch. Neither guy's really getting any ownership. Why isn't Daniel Lynch getting more ownership against the Tigers?
Because he's not very good, and you probably don't need to pay down that far all that often. But
that's fair.
I do think he's a reasonable pay down option if you need it. Overall this year, Lynch striking out 20.7% of hitters, 4.5 xFIP against right-handed hitters. 159 expected ISO, 21.8% strikeout percentage. Weirdly, a 12% strikeout percentage against lefties with a 190 expected ISO. Not really. I mean, it's a small sample. I'm not really sure what that's about, but you're going to get a right-handed heavy lineup from the Tigers. You pretty much always do. So it's not a spot that I really want to get to him, but I do think he's underpriced.
I just look at like Springs and Kramer at a little bit higher in price tags, pulling that 10 to 15% ownership. And I like, sometimes you just want to take the team that's playing the Tigers or take the pitcher that's playing the Tigers. So I could see.
And sometimes you just want to take anybody wearing a Kansas City uniform.
Sometimes it seems like the public wants to take anybody wearing a Kansas City uniform. 6th in top stack, 3rd in top value, 2nd in ownership. I'm lighter on both of those things. I know you'll be different, but right now the Royals are my biggest fade from a hitting perspective. They're getting a lot of ownership, and I don't really want it.
Yeah, I mean, we know how I feel about the Royals against good pitching. Now they're facing Drew Hutchison. Obviously, the ownership is pretty extreme, and that can be an issue. But Hutchison is a really bad pitcher. It is a park upgrade for Kansas City. As far as I know, maybe you're going to tell me it's not, but pretty sure it's a park upgrade for Kansas City. And all the things that make me want to roster them against good pitchers still apply here against Hutchison, where they are just they have a ton of multi-position eligibility. They have a lot of really cheap, like top hitting prospects. So I still think it's going to be really easy to get to them. And I do think that means that, like in the top stacks tool where they're getting 12% aggregate ownership, 6% chance of being the top stack, I think the actual like top stack percentage should be a little bit higher given the amount of value you get and also the amount of flexibility you get from Melendez, Witt, Dozier, Lopez, if you need him, all being multi-position eligible. So I still think it's a team that I probably get to, although the ownership is less appealing than it normally is.
Yeah, I've got a couple teams that I think are providing basically the same amount of value at half the ownership or less. And I'm just finding it easier to offload that Royals ownership and turn it into other comparable teams on a slate like this. I understand why they're grading out well. Like I do think they're in the pack of teams that are at the top, but if everybody's already going there, it's just going to be easier to be somewhere else.
Yeah, and it is a case where there's 6 guys right now projected for 10 to 18% ownership. Witt, Melendez, Perez, Dozier, Massey, and Prado, all getting at least 10%.
Yeah, I'm going to run my cash crunch right now just to see where these guys are actually showing up. Haven't run that yet. You would think there are cash options here for Kansas City, although they're a really weird team in that the top 3 guys are obviously, I don't want to say expensive, but like they're priced accordingly. And then you get to all this ridiculous value. So they're weird from a cash perspective as a team. It's not the same sort of balance that you normally see. I don't get any of these guys more than 20%. Have you run that crunch yet?
Doing it right now.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't get anybody, but Prado and Melendez are like 16, 17%. Which doesn't surprise me. I think I'm also slightly lower on the Royals than like sort of the public.
They're not showing up a ton using the Stokastic projections either.
Okay.
Obviously, okay, I take that back. Nick Prado is in every single lineup.
Really?
Bobby Witt's at like 30%. Perez is at like 30%.
Prado in every lineup.
Now he's in 98%.
For all intents and purposes, that's every lineup.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. So I'm Nate Lowe in 40%. And then Pujols tied with Prado. Just in general, I'd rather get to Prado in my mind. But if it's this year's Pujols, who the hell knows?
Right.
If he's going to continue to hit like he did when he was in his prime.
Yeah, I mean, the first base split for using the Stokastic projections is basically Prado or Pujols. It's just 95-5 Prado.
What the hell do I have Nate Lowe projected for? Does he have an MPE?
Low?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
No. I just assumed like I was wondering why I was getting so much. And I was just like, oh, maybe he's just getting it because he's showing up at outfield or something.
Yeah, I mean, Low against Pivetta on a team with a 3.8 implied run total seems like an extremely weird cash play at double the price of Nick Prado.
Yeah, it doesn't like when I look at it, it doesn't seem like that would be the play that I would get to. Like ownership would kind of like funnel him out of that conversation, but that's who showed up for me. We're going to talk about it shortly. Let's talk
Good
about
point
the
from
Tigers
Clayton in chat, which I was completely unaware of because I don't look at that stuff until the lineup comes out. But Pasquantino eligible to come off the injured list today. So if Pasquantino is in the lineup, I don't know what his price is on DraftKings, but I assume it's $2,000 cheaper than it should be.
Yeah, he's going to make that stack better. That's for sure. He is 2,600 today.
Yeah, that's dumb.
First base only though. So
yeah, so that's the where's Prado's back to first base only, I think also. Yeah. It's like every other day with Prado, he's first base or first base outfield. So that if Pasquantino is back, it's going to make that stack more, it's going to make the team more appealing as far as good hitters, but it's going to make them more difficult to stack because of those two having the same eligibility. On FanDuel, obviously, it's not an issue, and they'll both look good.
Tigers on the opposite side here, 6th in ownership. This is your number one value stack of the day, 14th in top stack. Another team that I'm just not getting to. I think I could just find value elsewhere that still isn't. That's just better than the Tigers. I don't like this game.
Yeah,
I get the Royals.
I agree with you on the Tigers. Obviously, like Javi Baez, a cheap Reyes are fine. Eric Haas is my favorite bat from the Tigers. Spencer Torkelson's back. Maybe he's figured out how to hit, but kind of doubt it. But yeah, I don't really have a lot of interest in Detroit.
Yeah, it's just doesn't seem necessary. At least not for me right now. I got nothing else in this game.
Me neither.
I don't think I asked you this. Any Tigers cash options? I don't think so, but they are free. So I figured I'd look. Yeah, I didn't see it either. Victor Reyes, I have in the 2-hole at flat 2K was certainly a potential option. All right, schedule for the rest of the day. This is pretty easy. At 4 p.m., we've got college football live before lock. That's going to be Ben and Matt Kajeski breaking everything down. Adam and I will be back for the deeper dive at 5, and then MLB live before lock at 6. So 3 straight hours of shows coming up later tonight, kicking it off with college football. And our MLB Top Stacks tool is free today. We're going to talk about it throughout this show and throughout the deeper dive. So if you want to follow along with us, go ahead and do so. Schedule also on the screen if you want to check it out. Game 4. Let's talk about how much I like Nate Lowe, apparently. 5.6 run implied total for the Red Sox, 4.3 for the Rangers. Nick Pivetta and Dallas Keuchel. No one going to Keuchel at 5K. 19% of the people going to Nick Pivetta at 7,700. It's another spot where I'm just lighter on a guy that's pulling some ownership. It's a great strikeout matchup against Texas, but 19% feels a little healthy.
Yeah, it's another one where it's just, I get it. I have no issue getting to Pivetta at 7,700. It's just, what is making like the huge difference between him and some of these other guys that I think are all just similar, good enough pitchers that also have some sort of flaw. In Pivetta's case, it's that he's home run prone and he's facing a Texas team with plenty of power. You talk about like Jeffrey Springs, who clearly is a better pitcher than Nick Pivetta, but he's facing the Yankees. Like, there's just a lot of guys lumped in here where it's like, oh, well, that could be good, but XYZ reason why it may not be. I have a hard time really thinking that any of them should be like massive, a lot more popular than the other ones.
Yeah, like we have Pivetta 9% to be top pitcher, 9% top value. I actually have it 11 and 11, but those are the same number if you're just sort of evaluating this thing. It doesn't really correspond to me getting to 20% of Nick Pivetta today if I don't have to, and I'm not. I have 5% right now. I'm just casting a pretty wide net, so I'm just light on Kramer, Springs, Cobb, Pivetta. I'm just going to spread it out elsewhere, and I have one guy that we don't have getting any ownership that I'm a little surprised by that I am getting to, but I'm also just jamming Charlie Morton because he looks good. I don't have anything else to say about Pivetta. I certainly don't have anything to say about Dallas Keuchel.
Yeah, I have nothing to say about Keuchel other than he's 5K, but don't think you need it and would rather get to Lynch or Sears.
I'd rather get to every single pitcher on the slate other than Dallas Keuchel.
I think that's a very reasonable take.
7 is the fantasy point projection that I've got for Dallas Keuchel, which is probably like half. He would be like a 50th percentile hitter today.
Yeah, we have him at 8.
That's pretty brutal. I mean, I've got 4 guys on his own team projected ahead of that, and all but one on the Red Sox.
It's actually really funny if you go to the Stokastic projections, sort by main slate, and then sort by fantasy points. As you would expect, it's just a string, and the pitchers are highlighted yellow. It's just a string of like yellow highlights for however many pitchers -1 there are on this slate. And then you get a bunch of hitters, and then you get this one lonely yellow highlight with Dallas Keuchel sandwiched between Randy Arozarena and Ryan Mountcastle.
All right, we got a lot to talk about here, lots to unpack. We're going to start with the Red Sox, who are number 1 in top stack, 12th in top value, number 1 in ownership. I agree with all of that. I think they look good here against Keuchel. 5.6 run implied total is very clearly top mark. I am still getting to Boston, even though they're getting ownership. I think they are unquestionably the number 1 stack, thanks to Dallas Keuchel being on the opposite side.
Yeah, and you get some reasonable pricing here. They're not like a true value stack in that, there's teams like Kansas City that are just like 2K across the board. But the only 2 hitters in this projected lineup north of 5K on DraftKings are Bogarts and Devers, which is clearly very well deserved. JD Martinez at 4,400, Story at 4,800, both reasonable. Bobby Dahlbeck, no multi-position eligibility for him anymore. That sucks, but also means maybe he won't be my highest owned hitter on the slate. But he's only 2,800. Tommy Pham leading off at 4,500. Dallas Keuchel just not a very good pitcher anymore. 182 expected ISO to righties this year. Limited sample. He does have a sub 100 expected ISO to lefties. Going back to last year, it's 100 flat. So not surprisingly, you really prefer to target him with right-handed power, but this is going to be a mostly right-handed lineup hitting in Fenway against a pitcher who doesn't throw hard. You should be able to pull fly balls against him. The only lefties in the projected lineup are Verdugo and Devers. They're obviously both fine. So I'm with you on liking Boston. You just need to find ways within Boston lineups to get, to make contrarian plays, but I still think they look good here.
Yeah, if I'm Verdugo and Devers, I'm flipping the helmet around and going into the righty batter's box here against Keuchel and just hoping I could yank one over the monster. They look great. This is a spot, like I just talked about how I don't love the Peterson ownership, or I don't love the Pivetta ownership or the Kramer ownership. And it's just like, I see the ownership on Boston. I do love it. It makes complete sense to me. I don't want to get away from it. I also don't want to get away from Texas. And I guess I was burying the lead a little bit, but I obviously mentioned that Nate Lowe was showing up for me. They are 8th in our top stack tool. They are 5th in ownership. I actually have them, from a rank perspective, a bit higher in top stack, but basically the exact same top stack score. I find the Rangers super easy to get to in this spot, and I don't really care all that much about Nick Pivetta. The Rangers are a team that I'm taking a pretty big stand on, at least as of right now.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised they're getting as much ownership as they are, but when you look at the individual hitter ownerships, it is skewed a bit by the normal guys. Corey Seager pulling 10%, Marcus Semien pulling 9%, your boy Nate Lowe pulling 6%. Overall, though, it's not like it's a super popular team to stack together. And I'm with you. It's a modest implied run total here, but Pivetta's a pitcher that if he's not on, he'll give it up in a hurry. He has this year strikeouts aren't great. He's done a little bit better job allowing or not allowing home runs too, but 159 expected ISO to lefties, 182 to righties. There's plenty of power in this lineup. It goes without saying that Seager is a great option. Semien looks fine. Nate Lowe looks fine. The only thing really working against Lowe is you're just going to have so many good, cheap first basemen that are essentially half of his price. But, Cole Calhoun is free. Adolis Garcia gets the Green Monster at 4,800. I like the upside from this team. And also don't sleep on Bubba Thompson at the bottom of the lineup. The guy is fast and 2K and will run.
Yeah, it's one of those things where when you're 8th in top stack and 8th in top value, like that's pulling up a lot for me because you're kind of getting a little bit of everything at that point. And for Semien, Seager, and Lowe, you're getting second, short, first as the first 3 spots as a road team. Like it becomes a lot easier to stack when you can basically pick anything to fill them in for. So right now, in terms of teams out there, the Texas Rangers are the team that I'm taking the biggest stand on relative to the public. So go Rangers at 11:30 a.m. at least. And apparently go Nate Lowe. Anything else in this game?
No, I was trying to pull up first base projections because I like Nate Lowe, but it's, I think, actually difficult to get to him. Because so if I use the Stokastic projections and sort by projection.
Yeah.
He's the 7th best first baseman. If I sort by value, he's the 17th best first baseman.
There's your difference. I have him 3rd
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
projection.
the top three using Stokastic are Prado, Pujols, Garcia.
Prado in overall projection?
No, in value.
Oh, okay. Go overall projection.
Oh, okay. Goldschmidt, Otani, Alonso, Freeman, Arise, Tellez, Lowe.
Okay. So I have Goldschmidt and Alonso ahead of him. Lowe third. I actually have him a tenth of a point ahead of Otani. And then ahead of Freeman, Tellez, and Arise.
I don't even know what to say to that.
I'm going to look and see if there's a very specific reason for that now. Okay, so it's Lance McCullers on the opposite side. It's Shohei Ohtani. Sure.
The gap between Nick Pivetta and Lance McCullers is not the gap between Nate Lowe and Shohei Ohtani.
Fair, I guess. I don't know. 4.2 plate appearances for Nate Lowe. Where do I have it for Ohtani? 4 for Ohtani. Angels 3.6 run implied total. Rangers 4.3. I'm not surprised by that at all. We're not having a question of is Ohtani better than Nate Lowe, but
I understand that.
You know, this is not, I don't think it's as crazy as you're making it seem to be.
It's probably not. I mean, for example, the difference that we have in projection is, I think, like 1.5 points in favor of Ohtani.
Like 1.5 points
1.3.
or 0.15?
What?
1.5 or 0.15?
1.5.
Oh, Jesus.
Ohtani at 9.3, Lowe at 8.1. Okay. So 1.2.
Yeah, I have it 8 and 7.9. I mean, like when I look at, I don't know why I should not be advocating for Nate Lowe the way that this is happening because I don't give a shit. He's got a 127 projected WRC plus from Steamer. Ohtani's is only 141. Like, I don't mean only, but like that gap is not big. I don't think it's crazy for a guy that's going to get potentially more plate appearances, I'm afraid. Jesus. Look, Nate Lowe, man, I'm telling you guys. That's really, I mean, what we're talking about is probably what, like a 60-40 decision?
What we're talking about is actually completely useless for this show. But
it's fun to argue.
It's more just to try and figure out how the hell you ever have Nate Lowe projected ahead of Shohei Ohtani.
Slightly more plate appearances in a better run environment against a better pitcher. Like, I could see it narrowing. Nate Lowe, home run. Here we go. This is the Cal Raleigh special of the day. Thank you, Dupe. I appreciate it. That's what we're talking about right now. We'll see where we're at the deeper dive. If the line moves or anything, we'll be able to talk about it a little bit further. You ready to move on?
Yeah.
That's fun, man. That was an interesting discussion. For a second, I was just like, oh no, did I make a gigantic mistake?
Yes, you just were able to somehow justify it to yourself afterwards.
Wow.
It's like when you're a teenager and you do something stupid, and instead of just admitting you were wrong, you just say, oh yeah, well it was fine because XYZ.
The biggest problem I ever had with a birthday was turning 20. I couldn't blame it on being a teenager any longer. I was just like, man, but my age doesn't end in teen any longer. Like, people are going to expect shit from me. I had like a quarter life crisis for that.
Yeah, well, imagine turning 30, except, still acting like you're 18.
Yeah, I got 40 on the helm coming up for that midlife crisis, man.
Yeah, but you're at least married and stuff. I am.
You say that like that's a good thing.
Well, no, but it at least
I say that as because she's not here right now. So
right. But like,
say it.
Yeah, but I literally could just still be a 22-year-old right now.
Could? I mean, you operate as if you are
that's what
younger
I'm saying.
than that.
The only difference between me and a 22-year-old is my body doesn't put up with it like it used to.
Yeah. Can you imagine if 22-year-old you had your money now?
Yeah, I mean, I remember 22-year-old me having like $5,000 and thinking, and that was like a lot, and being an idiot.
Good work there. Rays and Yankees. Let's try to move this one forward. 3.7 run implied total for the Rays, 3.3 for the Yankees. Jeffrey Springs and Domingo Herman. Springs, 14% owned. Erman, 7% owned. I'm not all that interested in either one of those guys, but I understand where at least some of the love comes from. But I don't want to prioritize Erman against the Rays or Springs against the Yankees.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. I mean, Springs is a really good pitcher. I think he's very, very clearly underpriced based on his talent level. Like, he just should never be 7,300, really. 26.6% strikeout percentage, 3.2 xFIP. He's at home in a good pitcher's park, only a 3.3 implied run total for the Yankees. He's very good against right-handed hitters as well, so that's a plus against the Yankees. 28.9% strikeout percentage, 130 expected ISO. He is getting some ownership at 14%, which I think is deserved given the fact that he's just cheaper than he should be. But you can't just completely ignore that it is a tough matchup against the Yankees. So, yeah, I think he's a good option. I think the ownership here makes sense on him. On Domingo Germán, I think it's more difficult to be confident in any part of this because, for one, he's only struck out about 18% of hitters this year, 4.4 xFIP. Clearly not the same level of pitcher as Jeffrey Springs. The matchup against Tampa Bay is okay, but at basically the same price point, I would rather get to Domingo Germán. He's getting 7% ownership as opposed to 14. So I think it's a spot where within a lineup you can certainly make the case for going Germán if you need to save some ownership. But Springs is clearly the one I prefer out of the two.
I have slightly more Erman, but both numbers are below the public. And I don't have the bats here. They are 25th in ownership and 21st in ownership. You could always try to buy Yankees power if you want, but to me, I don't think that we're going here in this park for offense.
Yeah, same here. I mean, the Yankees are the Yankees, but on a 13-game slate in Tropicana against a pitcher that's I think is really good in Springs, I don't anticipate really getting to the Yankees. If I were to get to one offense, probably Tampa, just because Domingo Germán, I think, is a lot more volatile, more likely to blow up. But then you look at the Tampa lineup, and it's just kind of like, well, where do I actually want to go here? And I really have no idea. So kind of just assume I don't get to either side.
All right. Guardians and Mariners, 3.4 run implied total for the Guardians, 4 for the Mariners. Zach Plesac and Luis Castillo. No ownership going to Plesac, nor should it. Castillo, 9,900 projected for 6.5% ownership. I'm a little over that number, although this is a terrible strikeout matchup.
Yeah, it's not a good strikeout matchup at all, but Castillo's also not getting much ownership, which is pretty appealing. We still have him third in top 2 pitcher percentage at 14%. Maybe this comes up, but comparing his ownership percentage to the pitchers around him in top 2 pitcher percentage, Morton 1 at 46%, Peterson 2 at 32%, Castillo 7%, Alcantara 18%, Cobb 15%, Springs 14%, Montgomery 10%. It really stands out how little ownership Castillo is getting. And I understand it from a projection standpoint. We have him, projected 3 points behind Charlie Morton. We have him projected half a point behind Peterson, and Peterson's $1,600 less expensive. We do have him projected ahead of Alcantara, and Alcantara's more expensive, so maybe that's a spot where I end up getting a little bit more Castillo. But a really tough strikeout matchup, but also a good pitcher that just isn't getting much ownership.
I have him a point ahead of Peterson and a point behind Alcantara, and I think you're probably more likely to be on that page.
Yeah.
But I'm also getting to Castillo. Like, he was 15% in my top pitcher tool. It's 14 for us. At 6.5%, I think he's underowned.
Yeah. And those pitcher projections, unlike Ohtani versus Lowe, I think are extremely interchangeable and debatable, and reasonable minds can differ. I think if you ever project Nate Lowe higher than Shohei Ohtani, unless he's playing on the moon against me and Shohei Ohtani's facing Jacob deGrom, you're an insane person.
Yeah. I mean, I have no problem if you want to just continue to be wrong. Chat probably thinks that that decision point should be 90-10.
Oh yeah, it's like a modified coin flip.
Right, with a slight lean to Nate Lowe.
Right. No. Not
you said right, you fucker. Oh man. Okay. Moral of the story: if you have the ability to get to Luis Castillo today and that ownership maintains, I think that's a really interesting spot. Although this is a place where strikeouts go to die.
Yeah, agreed.
We can skip Zach Plesac. We can probably skip the Cleveland bats, 26th in top stack, 19th in ownership. Mariners bats, though, 9th in top stack, 10th in ownership. I wish I were getting to more of this team, and I'm really surprised that I don't. But this is just another spot where I think 4% ownership for the Mariners is basically right.
Yeah, I mean, I like getting to him if you can. This is another team kind of like Boston too, where there's a few expensive hitters: Rodriguez, Haniger, Suarez, all north of 5K or higher on DraftKings. But then nobody else is above 4K. Ty France, the next most expensive guy. Plesac's had power issues to both sides of the plate this year: 190 to lefties, 211 expected ISO to righties. A lot of power in this Mariners lineup. It looks like it's supposed to be low to mid 80s in Cleveland as well. Modest implied run total, but I do like the power and I do like the lack of ownership here. I can't say that they're definitely a priority for me, but I do like the idea of getting to them in this spot.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind it. But again, it's outfield right out of the gate. They've got 2 first basemen in the lineup. They're just a hard team to actually piece together. That's all I got here.
Yeah. I saw Bill Miner say that he's on low, and it just made me realize I like Nate Lowe as a play. So it just made me realize that chances are I'm going to end up with 40% of him. He's going to hit 2 home runs. People are going to tell me I was wrong, and I'm just going to have screenshots.
Yeah, I'm happy. If Nate Lowe outperforms Ohtani, I will gloat like a ridiculous person on Monday morning. And if Ohtani beats Lowe, I'll just ignore it because it's just a one-off sample. And that's clearly not representative of my stance.
Yeah. My maintenance person just got here to fix my dishwasher. So are you good if I go let him in?
Yeah, I'm going to do a PrizePicks read. So
okay,
go for it. There we go. Well, now that Adam wants to bail because he took a loss in the Shohei Ohtani Nate Lowe conversation, I could talk to you guys about PrizePicks, the presenting sponsor of this show. You guys should just go to prizepicks.com right now and sign up using the promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO. That will get you up to $100 of a first match deposit bonus. So if you put in $25, you're only getting $25 back. But if you put in $100, they will match with $100. It's a great deal. We've got plenty of tools at Stokastic.com that could help you out. You could use Odds Shopper as well for some of these things. That's free, by the way. And you don't have to worry about sharks or optimizers. As much as I love Fantasy Cruncher, it's not necessary at PrizePicks. We're talking about over-unders on basically a lot of player props. And we just need to put together a parlay card. If you put together 5 winning bets, I'm going to call them bets. I don't know if they have a prizes, picks. I guess picks. I don't know if they have the terminology for that I'm supposed to use. If you get 5 right, you can net up to 10x your entry fee. Now that Adam's back at the desk, we're going to hit him with a couple pitcher fantasy scores. No, you know what we're going to do? We're going to hit him with a couple hitter fantasy scores. Let's see if we can find Shohei Ohtani and Nate Lowe here. Shohei Ohtani, over under 7. Remember, DraftKings scored.
Yeah. Over. We have him at 9.3.
I got him at 7.3. No, I'm just kidding. 7.9 for Ohtani. Nate Lowe, not on there. Son of a... That's annoying. That's so annoying. I wanted that to be there. 7.5. Just talking that ish, but doesn't really matter now. At least you get Ohtani. We can talk pitcher fantasy scores here. Let's see. Who would be the best guy to talk about? Well, I can say this much. I'm going to name 3 guys. You tell me who you think has the highest projected pitcher fantasy score on PrizePicks. Domingo Germán, Dean Kramer, and Jeffrey Springs.
Jeffrey Springs?
The answer would be Dean Kramer, 29.5. That is exactly where I have him.
Yeah, we have 27.3. I'd take the under.
Jeffrey Springs, 26.5. Domingo Germán, 26.5. I want the over on Springs.
Yeah, Germán's pretty close to a push. Springs is the clear over, I think.
There we go. Guys, go sign up at PrizePicks. Use that promo code AWESEMO. Get up to $100 on that first deposit. Braves and Marlins. 3.9 run implied total for the Braves. 2.9 for the Marlins. Charlie Morton and Sandy Alcantara going in this one. 46% owned for Morton. 17% owned for Alcantara. Alcantara, 10,300, the most expensive pitcher on the slate. 9,300 for Charlie Morton in this spot in an incredible strikeout matchup against a team that's not very good. I don't know why Charlie Morton is only 9,300 for today. He's projected for 46% ownership. I have 67%, the unquestioned number 1 pitching option today.
Yeah, right there with you. I mean, 46% ownership on a slate with as much quality pitching as this one has, you could certainly argue is more than it should be. I mean, 24% chance of being a top two pitcher. But at the same time, 24% chance of being a top two pitcher for him. David Peterson next at 15%. So pretty big gap there between him and everyone else. I don't think it's a Spencer Strider situation where I am like, I think I said on the show with Greg yesterday that I was more likely to have 90+% of Strider than to be below 90%. Not that kind of a spot, but still a spot where Morton pretty clearly stands out as the guy. Good matchup against Miami, really good pitcher. Nothing really negative to say other than, the ownership is certainly there.
Yeah. If you don't have Charlie Morton in cash, you are aggressively playing cash incorrectly. Let's talk about my boy Alcantara, though. 10,300 in a matchup against the Braves. Are you surprised to see him still getting 17% ownership?
Not really, because there are strikeouts in the Atlanta lineup. Alcantara is a good pitcher. This is not a great park shift for him, though, getting out of Miami. Only a 23% strikeout percentage this year, but he makes up for it just by going so deep into games constantly. He's kind of like a 1998 type pitcher in 2022, where like you just know he's going to go out there and get you, 7+ innings basically, with legit chances at complete games. Like you never. Whenever somebody throws a complete game these days, it's like, oh, that's a nice added bonus. If you go to his game logs on DraftKings, just in the top 5, you have 2 complete games. You go back like 5-6 more starts, you get another one. You go back 4 starts before that, you get another one. So it's just like a old school pitcher in that he is efficient. He goes out there, he gives you a lot of innings. And so that does offset some of the strikeout concerns. And it's not like he's a bad strikeout pitcher. 23.5% is still fine. But, just the fact that he is relatively likely to get you an extra inning plus, more than anybody else on the slate certainly makes him playable.
I got to 20%, so I'm happy to still get there. Especially like I don't love targeting against the Braves, but there's a reason the Braves still have a sub-4 implied total. That's because he's on the opposite side. I assumed he would get a little bit less ownership. Like, how do you feel about his 17 in relationship to Luis Castillo?
I think that Castillo should. I don't even think Alcantara is really going over-owned, but I think Castillo is going under-owned.
I'm with you there. I can't talk about you at 10,100 or you Darvish at 9,800. That was interesting. I didn't expect it to break that way when the words were coming out of my mouth. It sounded so repetitive, but yeah, I understand the pitching ownership in this game. And from what I can see in chat, Charlie Morton at the highest owned pitcher, easy fade.
Yeah, obviously that's how this works.
Yep. We're not rostering bats in this game, are we?
I don't think so. I mean, Atlanta's one of those teams that you can always get to, but 13-game slate, not the guy that I'm really trying to do it against. And then going to Miami here seems a little unnecessary.
I agree. White Sox and Twins, 3.8 run implied total for the White Sox, 4.2 for the Twins. Davis Martin, whatever that is, and Sonny Gray going in this one. No ownership going to either guy. How much Sonny Gray at 8,100 are you going to get?
That's kind of surprising that he's not getting any ownership at 8,100. 1% for Sonny Gray. That seems pretty appealing. Like, is there something
32 for Peterson at $200 less?
What'd you say?
He's Peterson at $200 more than Gray at 32 times the ownership.
Yeah, I don't get it. The White Sox aren't a great strikeout lineup, but the White Sox also are, as has been discussed in chat a lot already today, currently using Elvis Andrus as their leadoff hitter. Like this team is not very good right now. They're missing guys. Like I don't have a 3.7 implied run total. I'm not saying Gray should be like the highest owned pitcher on the slate or anything close to it. I'm not saying I like him more than Peterson because I don't, but I don't really get this ownership. I don't think. I also don't totally get our 14.8 point projection on him either. Like, it seems kind of low, but I guess it's reasonable when I look at some of the other guys around him. But point being, like, he's still a good pitcher. So far this year, he has struck out 24.2% of hitters. We've seen that kind of trending up, well below 1 home run per 9 innings, 3.69 xFIP, 3.42 FIP. He's been a good pitcher for years. If anything, I think that he probably improves from this point forward just because, we've seen him in the past have better strikeout numbers. And this year has been weird in that he's, gotten shut down a couple of times with injuries. Obviously, at the beginning of the year, he was limited because of the abbreviated spring training. So I think there's a decent chance that you're just kind of seeing him finally get into the swing of things and that you see him be better for the rest of the year. I don't think he's like a huge priority on this slate, but I really just have no idea why he's getting no ownership. He's $400 more than Pivetta, and Pavetta's getting 19 times the ownership. Like, I don't get it.
Neither do I. Neither do I. I'm getting to some Sonny Gray, and I'm very happy about it. Seems perfect for GPPs. We're going to skip Martin. We're going to talk about the Twins bats, fourth in top stack, fourth in top value, third in ownership. I'm a bit more pessimistic about the Twins as a stack, so I am coming in at about half the field, and I'm not mad about that. 4.2 run implied total, I think, stands out, particularly in this park with this power. Doesn't appear like I get why the Twins are getting ownership because they're basically free. I just feel like I can find better value.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the spot. Just because I don't think Martin is particularly good. Limited sample this year, but 193 expected ISO to lefties, 138 to righties. The issue with Minnesota is just kind of like, where do you go in the lineup? I still like Nick Gordon. He's 2,200. He has second base outfield eligibility. That's nice. But, Luis Ariz looks fine, but he's first base only at 4,400. That's problematic just because there's so many good first base options. Correa looks pretty good. Miranda looks pretty good, but it's not the most exciting stack, I don't think. Nick Gordon would be my favorite option here.
18% owned for Gordon, certainly in the cash considerations. Do I still have that open? I assume I do. He got the 21% for me.
He was in,
by the way,
28%.
What was your pitching combination? I've got Morton and Alcantara.
Morton Peterson, 100% of both.
Okay.
Also,
that makes sense.
So Gordon's in 28% of the lineups I crunched, but that also has Polanco in 30. Polanco may or may not be in the lineup.
Yeah. The way that if this holds, I'm going to end up being a bit light on Minnesota. Fine with me. On the opposite side, White Sox 20th in top stack, 15th in ownership. I got about 4%. That's sort of just right with the field. Do you have any interest in the White Sox against Gray?
No. No.
All right.
I was going to say, especially not at 1%, but like either way, I just don't care.
Cardinals and Cubs, 4.8 run implied total for the Cards, 3.1 for the Cubs. Jordan Montgomery and Adrian Sampson. We're not going to talk about Adrian Sampson. We are going to talk about Jordan Montgomery, who pitches every day for the Cardinals. 9,200 projected for 10% ownership. Should he be more owned? Because I have a bit more than that.
Sorry, I was trolling Saul Goodman on Twitter, but
reasonable.
Yeah. Montgomery, the issue I have with Montgomery here is just that he's 9,200 and there's a lot of quality pitching that's less expensive than him. 10% ownership, I think, is fair. I think I might even end up a little bit less just because he is more expensive than, for example, Sonny Gray. But he has been very good since going to St. Louis. I mean, he's been good all season long, but it's the results have been much better since going to St. Louis. 21.5% strikeout percentage overall this year, 3.45 xFIP. There are some strikeouts in the Cubs lineup. There's power too, but he typically does a good job of limiting that. Only a 138 expected ISO to righties this year. One thing that does concern me is you are likely to have a very right-handed heavy lineup for the Cubs. And so far this season, Montgomery has struck out 32.6% of lefties compared to 19.3% of righties. So could be a situation where like you're getting a lot of ground balls, but not necessarily a great fantasy game unless he happens to give you a complete game shutout again. But yeah, I think Montgomery looks good. I just kind of think at 9,200, he might end up being somebody that gets squeezed for me a little bit.
Okay. We won't talk about Sampson. I don't think that we're going to talk about Cubs bats. Let's talk about Cards bats. 6th in top stack, 8th in ownership. I'm a little bit over the field here on Cardinals. I think they look pretty good because Adrian Sampson sucks.
I don't think Adrian Sampson sucks, but I do think the Cardinals look pretty good. And I don't think Adrian Sampson's good. I guess I should say I think Adrian Sampson is better than he used to be when he very clearly sucked. Now I think he's just kind of not good, but not like a total gas can like he used to be. Overall this year, 17% strikeout percentage, 4.5 xFIP. Has still had trouble with right-handed power in particular, though. 214 expected ISO to righties. Sets up really well for Goldschmidt, Arenado, O'Neill, Pujols if he's in the lineup at somehow still 2K. So I'm with you as far as liking the Cardinals, even if I maybe don't think Sampson's quite as bad as you do.
He stinks. It's fine. Just say he stinks.
He's not Dallas Keuchel. He's not Davis Martin. He's not Drew Hutchison.
I mean, what, is that the way we're going to compare people? Oh, he's not Dallas Keuchel, the guy that shouldn't be in the majors at all.
That was my only point. Was like Adrian Sampson used to be that guy.
Sure.
Now he's not. Now he's just like a guy that wouldn't be pitching for good teams, but he's not like a given that he's going to give up 100 runs.
Fair. I'll give you that one. Angels and Astros. 3.6 run implied total for the Angels. That's very low for someone with Shohei Ohtani in the lineup. 4.4 for the Houston Astros. Reed Detmers and Lance McCullers. McCullers 7% owned. Detmers not owned. If I'm getting to either side of this one, it's certainly going to be McCullers. It's always a decent strikeout matchup here. I think McCullers is under-owned. To me, he's just like a slightly cheaper version of Luis Castillo today.
Yeah, I agree with that. One thing to keep in mind is that this Angels team isn't running out the same number of strikeouts necessarily that they were previously. Mike Ford in place of Jared Walsh knocks that down a little bit. Fletcher leading off knocks it down a little bit. It's still a good matchup, but it's not quite the same strikeout matchup that we've seen in the past. Ford career strikeout percentage 22.2%. Walsh I think is somewhere around like 30%. So that one's a pretty big difference. You're getting the more at bats for Fletcher at the top. So it's not quite the same as it was for a lot of the year, but McCullers is still a solid pitcher. I think that the range of outcomes for him, like there's still a lot of volatility just because he's always been a volatile pitcher because he wastes so many pitches, and it's almost like Blake Snell-esque in that typically you end up with that one inning where it's just like, all right, well, if a ground ball gets through here, he's dead, and if it doesn't, he's gonna have a good start. And then you add on top of that he had the injury, and he's only made 3 starts in the majors this year. But 90 and 91 pitches in his last 2 games, only went 5 innings in each one, but the fact that he can throw 90 pitches is good. It's just kind of a pitcher where I think there's a really wide range of outcomes, but at 6% ownership, that's pretty appealing.
Anything for Detmers on the opposite side, or are you just trying to avoid the bad strikeout matchup against the Houston Astros?
Yeah, I'm good with just avoiding an $8,600 Detmers against Houston, I think.
There you go. I don't want to avoid Houston, though. Number 2 in top stack, number 4 in ownership. I'm still getting there, even with them being 4th in ownership. I just like this order quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't think Detmers is bad by any stretch. 155 expected ISO to righties this year, 130 to lefties, but it's still Houston. It's, as you've pointed out, a park upgrade going into Anaheim. Yeah, I just think that getting to the Astros here is pretty appealing. I'm kind of surprised we have them as the second highest top stack percentage, given how many bad pitchers are on this slate and the fact that Detmers isn't bad, but 7% chance of being the top stack, 7% aggregate ownership seems like a pretty good spot.
I have them lower. I got them at 5.2%, but I'm still getting to them.
Yeah.
But sounds like that fits your. I have them 5th in top stack, not 2nd. So
yeah, and it's another team too where the aggregate ownership is pulled up a bit by Alvarez, Tucker, Altuve all being 10+%. Pena and Bregman are at 8, but like you have Gurriel at 4, you have Mancini at 3, Vasquez is at 2.
I think a little bit might have to do with the fact I don't have Alvarez in the lineup right now. So that's certainly bringing top stack odds down a bit.
Sure.
I think they're going to have a slightly higher upside if Yordan Alvarez is in the lineup.
I will say that I don't think they should be 2 to 3 times as popular as the Mets.
Let me look at it. Let's see. Mets, Astros. I mean, if you're asking me, I have the Astros at 5.2% chance of being the top stack. I have the Mets at 5.2% chance of being the top stack. So yeah, I can get behind that. I have them as the exact same team from top stack odds. Slightly more cost efficient actually for the Astros, but nothing crazy. And again, that's because I don't have Alvarez. They would look a lot more similar. And well, I think the Astros would be slightly higher than in top stack, but yeah, I don't see a huge difference between those two teams. Angels bats. This is a Trout Ohtani thing, right? But why would you go to Ohtani if you can get Nate Lowe?
Yeah, exactly.
Diamondbacks and Brewers. 4.2 run implied total for the D-backs. 4.3 for the Brewers. Zach Davies and Eric Lauer. No ownership coming in here. Do you have any interest in Lauer?
Modest, but I would rather like he's to me he's the same play as Sonny Gray, except Sonny Gray is $900 less expensive, so I would lean there.
Okay. And we're not talking about Zach Davies. So
I see no reason to do that unless, it is a revenge matchup.
also hit that like button, guys. We're at 75, 330 people in here. I think we can get up to 100 if you guys want to help us out by hitting that thumbs up. We'll talk Brewers, third in top stack, seventh in ownership. I'm basically getting to the same amount as the field. Probably not going to have Christian Yelich today, or at least I don't think that they will. How do you feel about the Brewers?
I think it's a kind of middle of the road spot. Like you said, Yelich left yesterday's game early, but the Brewers' pricing is very favorable, so that's going to help you get to them. We have them third in top stack percentage as well, and actually going a little bit under owned here. If that holds, I think I probably get there. Don't love the park. Davies this year, 154 expected ISO to lefties, 163 to righties. Nothing that really stands out there, but Willy Adames, 5,300 is going to look like a good shortstop option. And then outside of him, nobody in their projected lineup on DraftKings is higher than Hunter Renfroe at 4,400. So it just ends up being a team where you get a lot of power upside from Adames, Tellez, Renfroe, whoever else you round out the lineup with. And then you can fit good pitching, you can fit good one-offs around them. It's going to be a pretty easy team to get to, especially if the ownership stays as low as it is.
I can't disagree with you. I have a bit, and I'm happy about it. I don't have any like major priorities here in the lineup, but I am just simply getting to Milwaukee, and that's because Zach Davies is on the opposite side. Do you have any interest in Arizona? This is a team that I'm unfortunately getting to, and I think it's just because of how cheap the rest of this lineup is. You can it's expensive for Rojas and Marte, but you can't play them together. So like that expensiveness doesn't really matter. After you pick whoever you want at second, you're already down to 4,300 for your next second most expensive player.
Yeah, and depending on the lineup that comes out, they could have a catcher leading off in Carson Kelly at 3,500. That's always going to be appealing. Emmanuel Rivera at 3,100, probably batting somewhere in the top five. Christian Walker's price just keeps falling. He's down to 4,300. That's a nice power bat. And then you do have, you have Stone Garrett, or assuming we have Stone Garrett, who's cheap. He's not really any sort of prospect, but he's cheap. But Corbin Carroll, if he's in the lineup, $2,100 on DraftKings, arguably the top prospect in baseball. Power, speed combination. Yeah, it's lefty-lefty. It seems like it's been lefty-lefty like every game he's played so far somehow, but that's just a ton of talent for 2,100. So I don't love the Diamondbacks, and I don't think Lauer's a bad pitcher, but I think like the way that their lineup sets up and the fact that there is some power and cheap upside in it.
Yeah, I'm getting to a bit of the Diamondbacks here at their current ownership. I just see them as like an easier value option to get to than some of the value teams that are pulling a ton of ownership. I don't love it. I don't like the park. Like, I think Lauer's fine, but I am getting to Arizona.
Yeah, and it is worth noting, Lauer's had some issues with righties this year. 170 expected ISO, 203 actual ISO. Again, not a bad pitcher, not somebody that I think is likely to struggle here, but there is some, additional power upside for these guys.
Dodgers and Padres, 4.3 run implied total for the Dodgers, 3.5 for the Pods. You are on the hill for LA, taking on you.
Oh, now I get it. I didn't know what
Padres.
you were referring to earlier.
Well, you should have known that you were on the bump for the Dodgers today. Dustin May and Yu Darvish. You versus you, depending on how you want to look at this. No ownership coming in here at all to both sides. I got to say it. I'm getting to Darvish if he's not owned. I don't like targeting against the Dodgers in any way, particularly on a 13-game slate. I kind of just need Darvish to get like 4% ownership so I don't get 18 like I have right now.
I kind of doubt I get to either pitcher here. Like, I understand it on Darvish, but the thing that makes me think I probably don't end up getting to him is you're functionally getting the same thing with Luis Castillo at 6%, and I think he looks better at $100 more. And then also Sonny Gray for $1,700 less. Not to say that Gray necessarily is as good as Darvish or has the same strikeout stuff, even though he does. But my point being that you're getting a similar medium middle of the road projected guy at $1,800 less and 1% ownership. So it's kind of like if I need low owned pitching, I'm going to just go to Castillo or Gray.
I just need Darvish to climb slightly in ownership. It's causing a problem right now that he's at the ass end of it, all 0.5% ownership, but that's something that I could probably just like if I just change Yu Darvish's ownership to 4%, I think it's going to have a pretty dramatic effect on how much of him that I actually get. Let's see. Updated to 4. Yeah. So if I just bump him to 4, I get a little bit more Castillo and I only get to 9% Darvish, at which point, perfect. So just one of those things that I need to like take a look at and make sure, because I don't think he's going to be 0.5% owned either. It'll be like 2 or 3. And I want that to be there so that I don't have to just jam you Darvish against the Dodgers. Are you playing yourself? Don't ever play yourself.
No, I'm not.
Yeah. I got the 4%. I don't know why in the world you would ever be 10,100 unless we're using a different currency, but that's neither here nor there. Bats in this one, kind of a tough sell. Dodgers and Padres, both great teams, and you're always happy to get to these offenses. But Dustin May and Yu Darvish are both good pitchers.
Yeah, Darvish does give up some power. 176 expected ISO to righties, 153 to lefties. I do have some interest in the Dodgers just because they are so good, but they are also expensive. Their projected lineup has the top 5 hitters north of 5K, the top 2 hitters north of 6K, and then 4,600 for Turner hitting 6th, Gavin Lux hitting 7 at 4K, Bellinger at the bottom of the order hitting 4,200. They only have one hitter in their projected lineup sub 4K, and it's Gallo at 3,800. So really difficult team to get to from a salary standpoint. And Darvish, while you certainly can get to him, he's not the type of pitcher that I'm like necessarily looking to go out of my way to jam in expensive Dodgers against.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add here. Are you more likely to get to Darvish over May? Or vice versa? Or is the most likely answer just like you have?
The most likely answer is
don't
neither.
Care. Okay. All right, let's close this out. Giants and Phillies, 3.8 run implied total on both sides. Alex Cobb and Kyle Gibson. Cobb 7,800, Gibson 7,500. We've got Cobb projected for 15% ownership, which I think makes a lot of sense. Can we talk about this one for a second? I want to get your thoughts because I actually used this game as one of my bets last night. This game is a literal coin flip. Even on both sides on the money line. Does that seem right to you? And I know you're not like this isn't something that you're paying attention to. I can go through my details if you need me to.
I mean, I think it seems fine. Like Alex Cobb's better than Kyle Gibson. The Phillies are better than the Giants. Giants are at home.
I don't know how the Giants aren't favored in this game.
Like I think they should be slightly favored.
Yeah, I'll take that.
But I think they are now.
Are they really?
They're minus 113.
So not moving a ton here. I was very surprised. I think the gap between Cobb and Gibson is bigger than the gap between the Phillies offense and the Giants offense. And then that doesn't even factor in that this game is in San Francisco. Wild line to me. What do you think about the Cobb ownership at 7,800?
I think that price tag's too cheap. To me, it's similar to the Jeffrey Springs spot where Cobb is just much better than $7,800. 24.5% strikeout percentage, 2.85 xFIP. He's gotten pretty unlucky in spots this year, but only a 66% left on base percentage, insanely low. 331 BABIP is really high, but still having a solid year and probably should be even better. The matchup against the Phillies isn't ideal. The ballpark is good. So I think at 7,800, Cobb getting 15% ownership or so makes sense. I think he's very, very similar to Jeffrey Springs.
Okay. I'm with you. I think he looks pretty good. That price is kind of crazy. That said, I don't know if I need a lot of him if he's already getting the ownership. I think we could just sort of spread that out. I know what I don't want, and that's the bats on either side here.
Yeah, I'm not interested in bats. The park sucks. Cobb is really good. Kyle Gibson is not great, but he's not somebody I love taking hitters against anyway. I doubt that I get the bats in this game.
All right, let's sum it all up. Favorite pitchers.
Morton, Peterson, and then just like a bunch of guys that blend together.
That's how weird today's slate is. I have 71% Charlie Morton, 22% Alcantara. That one's for you, by the way. I don't have, and then 16% Montgomery. I then have 16 pitchers between 1 and 10% owned. Weird day.
Yeah, I expect to just have like a lot of mixed and matched pitchers.
Yeah. Well, I expect to have a lot of Morton plus everybody.
Right.
5 to 10 versions of Morton plus someone across the board.
I kind of just assume that if you're not named Morton and to some extent Peterson and you're getting ownership, I will have less of you and more of somebody who is priced next to you.
Favorite stacks?
Boston, Milwaukee, St. Louis, KC, Mets. Mariners.
Rangers, Red Sox, Diamondbacks, Astros. Right now, I'm fading Twins, Tigers, Royals. GPP videos coming out shortly, and then you and I are back again for the deeper dive. Anything I'm missing here?
Nope.
There we go, everybody. Hit that like button. 86 slacking. Hit that thumbs up. Get us up over 100. Thank you for joining us. Adam and I back again 5 p.m. Don't forget, college football live before lock at 4 p.m. Thank you, PrizePicks, for sponsoring this video. We're out of here. Peace.